I have a question. I want you to be honest.
Okay.
Have you ever had a person in your life, maybe a boss, a neighbor, an ex, who didn't just annoy you, but actually made you question your own sanity?
Oh, yeah. I think everyone has.
I'm not talking about someone who's just like, having a rough month. I mean, someone who creates chaos out of thin air, refuses to take responsibility for anything, and somehow, by the end of it all, you're convinced that you are the problem.
It's that universal, am I taking crazy pills
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And we usually label these people difficult or, toxic.
Right.
But those words are a little too fuzzy. They don't really help us solve the problem. So today, we are getting clinical. We're looking at a specific category of human behavior that, once you see the pattern, explains so much of that chaos.
We are diving into the work of Bill Eddy. And for those who don't know him, he has, like, the perfect resume for this nightmare. He's a lawyer, a therapist, and a mediator.
The trifecta.
Yeah. He co-founded the High Conflict Institute, and we've pulled the best insights from his books. 5 types of people who can ruin your life, and Our New World of Adult Bullies, plus his Huberman Lab appearances.
And the core concept we need to wrap our heads around today is the high conflict personality, or HCP for short.
Okay, let's start with the definition, because I feel like we overuse terms like narcissist or toxic on social media these days. Isn't HCP just a fancy way of saying a jerk?
No, and that distinction is absolutely vital. I mean, we all have bad days. We all snap at people or act selfishly sometimes.
Sure.
But Bill Eddy points out a crucial difference. The DSM, that's the manual psychiatrists use, estimates about 10% of the population has a personality disorder. But an HCP is a specific subset of that group.
So you can have a personality disorder but not be high conflict.
Exactly. You could just be quiet, withdrawn, or, struggle internally. The high conflict part is the key differentiator.
Okay.
What makes them an HCP isn't just that they have a disorder, it's that they are obsessed with a target of blame.
A target of blame. That sounds incredibly specific.
It's the defining characteristic.
Yeah.
It's this: preoccupation with blaming others, usually someone close to them, or maybe in a position of authority.
And they can't reflect on their own behavior.
Not really. A problem comes up, and their brain just instantly, reflexively looks for someone else to pin it on. It's not a choice. It's a defense mechanism.
So, unlike a regular jerk who might, apologize later, these people literally cannot accept responsibility.
Correct. And Eddy outlines 4 primary traits that show up every time. First, lots of all or nothing thinking. You're either a savior or a demon.
No in between.
None. Second, unmanaged emotions. Third, extreme behavior. And fourth, that relentless blaming.
It sounds exhausting just talking about it, but here's the thing, and this is really the mission of this deep dive. We want to build a field guide so you can spot these people before they ruin your life.
Yes.
Because usually by the time you realize what you're dealing with, you're already trapped.
That's the danger zone. And frankly, if you're already entangled with one, your normal instincts, trying to be nice, trying to explain, they're all going to fail.
Yeah.
You need a counterintuitive toolkit.
Let's start with detection then, because in my experience, these people don't walk around with a sign saying, I will ruin your year.
Not at all.
They can be charming, successful, even magnetic. So how do we spot them before we, sign the contract or go on the 3rd date?
Eddy suggests a detection tool he calls the WEB method, W-E-B.
WB, what's that stand for?
It stands for words, emotions, and behavior.
Okay, break that down. Words seems tricky because everyone vents. What's the tell?
You're listening for the victim language, but combined with aggression. It's never, I made a mistake. It's all your fault, or it's all her fault.
Fine.
And you're listening for extremes, winners versus losers, pure evil versus pure good. If you're on a first date and they describe their ex as the devil incarnate and their old boss as a monster, your radar should be screaming.
Right, because the common denominator in all those monster stories is them.
Precisely. So then you have E for emotions. And this is where people get it wrong. They look at the other person's emotions, Eddy says. Look at yours.
How I feel around them.
Yes. High conflict emotions are contagious. We have mirror neurons.
Mm.
If you're around someone and you suddenly feel like a physical drop in your stomach, or you feel defensive, or you feel like you have to justify your own existence, that is a data point.
It's that walking on eggshells sensation.
Exactly that.
Or that feeling of, why am I sweating? We're just having coffee.
Yes. Trust that stomach drop. Your body's detecting a threat that your conscious brain hasn't processed yet.
Okay, so words and emotions, that leaves B, behavior. And the source material had a rule here that I found really fascinating, the 90% rule.
This is the best litmus test in the book. You just ask yourself one question. Would 90% of people ever do this?
But wait, doesn't that just penalize people for being eccentric? I mean, wearing a weird hat is something 90% of people wouldn't do, but it doesn't make you dangerous.
That's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't talking about quirks or style choices.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about behavior that violates social boundaries or, safety.
Okay.
For example, screaming at a receptionist because an appointment is 5 minutes late, or cutting to the front of a line and announcing, "I'm more important than you."
Right. 90% of people wouldn't do that.
No.
There was a specific example from a Reddit thread we looked at that really stuck with me. And it wasn't aggressive, which is why it was so confusing. It was about a guy who met someone for the first time and gave them this incredibly long, intense, intimate hug.
Ah, yes, that is a classic 90% rule violation.
See, I think a lot of people would brush that off. They'd say, oh, he's just a hugger. He's passionate.
And that's how they get in. But just think about it. Would 90% of strangers hold you intimately for 10 seconds upon meeting? No.
No.
It shows a total lack of boundary recognition. And Eddy warns that people who violate boundaries to get close to you will eventually violate boundaries to hurt you.
Wow.
The mechanism is the same. They don't respect the line where you begin and they end.
That is a chilling thought. Too much too soon is a red flag, not a compliment.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that leads to Eddy's most unpopular piece of advice, the first year rule.
I have to push back on this one. He suggests waiting a full year before making a major commitment, marriage, moving in, a business partnership.
I know.
In this economy, in the age of dating apps, who has a year to just wait and see? It feels a little like lawyerly overcaution.
It sounds conservative, I agree, but here's the psychology behind it. High conflict personalities are masters of masking. They can hold it together for 3 months, maybe even 6. They can mirror what you want to see.
Okay.
But the cycle of an HCP usually involves a breakdown when stress hits. And it is statistically very, very rare for them to be able to mask those 4 traits, especially the blaming, for a full 365 days.
So you're basically waiting for the stress test. You're waiting to see what happens when the tire goes flat or the flight is canceled.
Exactly. You need to see them in a crisis. If the mask slips and there's a monster underneath, you want to know that before you've signed a lease.
Okay, fair enough. So let's say the mask flips. We've been using HCP as a catch-all, but the sources break this down into 5 specific types, and this is helpful because they don't all look the same.
Right, a screamer looks very different than a con artist.
Yeah.
And while these correspond to personality disorders, Eddy focuses on the fear that's driving them. If you understand the fear, you can predict the behavior.
Let's run through them. Type 1, the narcissistic HCP.
Their core fear is being inferior or powerless. So to cope, they have to be superior. They have to put you down to lift themselves up.
Right.
If they aren't the winner, they feel like they're dying.
Type 2, the borderline HCP. Now, this one is often misunderstood.
The driver here is the fear of abandonment. It creates that "I love you, don't leave me" dynamic that can flip instantly to "I hate you" if they perceive even a slight rejection.
How does that look in a workplace? Because usually we think of this in terms of, volatile romance.
Well, in an office, it might look like a coworker who is your best friend 1 week oversharing, bringing you coffee.
Super intense.
Very intense. But then you go to lunch with someone else, or you don't support their idea in a meeting, and suddenly you are the enemy. They feel abandoned, so they launch a revenge campaign to destroy your reputation.
That whiplash effect.
Yeah.
Okay, type 3, the antisocial HCP.
This is the most dangerous one. Think con artist. Their fear is being dominated. They refuse to be controlled by social rules or laws.
So they're just above it all.
Totally. They can be incredibly charming, but they have zero remorse. They actually enjoy hurting people because it makes them feel powerful.
Is there a tell for this type? Because charming and dangerous is a terrifying combo.
Eddy gives a great tip here. Watch out for people who constantly say, "Trust me."
Trust me.
Yeah. If someone is honest, they let their actions build trust over time. If someone commands you to trust them, especially early on, they're usually trying to bypass your skepticism.
I see. Type 4, the paranoid HCP.
This one is driven by a fear of betrayal. They hold grudges forever. They assume you are plotting against them, so they counterattack first.
A preemptive strike. Yeah.
Exactly, against a threat that only exists in their head.
And type 5, the histrionic HCP.
The fear of being ignored. They need to be the center of attention. If the spotlight moves off them, they will create drama, exaggerate medical issues, or start rumors just to get eyes back on them.
So here is the question I know the listener is asking. You spot a colleague who fits that paranoid profile perfectly. Do you pull them aside? Do you say, hey, I was listening to this deep dive, and I think you might be a high conflict personality?
No. Hard no. Never, ever do that.
Why not? Wouldn't it, help them get some insight? Maybe they go get therapy?
It will backfire 100% of the time. Remember, their core deficit is a lack of insight and a compulsion to blame.
Right.
If you label them, you aren't helping them. In their eyes, you are attacking them. You are confirming their paranoia. You will instantly become their permanent target of blame.
So rule number 1, keep the diagnosis to yourself. But that brings us to the practical nightmare. We have to deal with these people. And our instinct, my instinct anyway, is to use logic. If someone is screaming about something that isn't true, I want to pull out the spreadsheets and prove them wrong.
And you will lose. Eddy calls this the logic trap.
But facts are facts. How can I lose with facts?
Because you are speaking the wrong language. Logic lives in the left brain. But an HCP in a triggered state is operating almost entirely out of the right brain and the amygdala, the fear center.
They're in survival mode?
Total survival mode. Logic literally cannot penetrate that state. It's like trying to explain algebra to a dog that's being chased by a bear. The dog isn't stupid. It's just busy trying to survive.
So showing them the email where they said the opposite of what they're saying now, that doesn't help.
It usually makes it much worse. It humiliates them, which increases their fear, which then increases the attack.
Okay.
Eddy lists 4 things you should just forget about doing. He calls them the 4 forget about it's.
Let's hit them.
1, forget about insight. They won't get it. 2, forget about the past. Do not argue about history. You will never agree on what happened. 3, forget about emotions. Don't ask how they feel. It opens a floodgate. And do not share your own anger.
And the 4th one is labeling, which we covered. But I want to go back to that point about sharing your own emotions. We are told constantly that vulnerability is strength, right? Bring your authentic self to work.
That is great advice for healthy relationships. It is terrible advice for dealing with an HCP.
Right.
Eddy says, reasonable people don't tell everybody every negative thing they think. If you are authentic with an HCP, if you tell them, I'm really insecure about my presentation skills, you aren't bonding. You are handing them ammunition.
Wow.
They will store it, and 6 months later, when they need to hurt you, they will use it.
So with an HCP, you have to be boring.
You have to be guarded. You have to practice self-preservation over authenticity.
Okay, so we can't use logic, we can't share feelings, and we can't talk about the past. If I can't quit my job or divorce my co-parent, what can I do? We need a toolkit that actually works.
This is where we pivot to the CARS method. It stands for connect, analyze, respond, set limits.
Okay, let's start with C, connect. And the notes say we do this with statements, empathy, attention, respect. I have to be honest, I hate this.
Most people do.
No, really. If someone is lying about me to HR or screaming at me in front of my kids, the last thing I want to do is show them respect. It feels weak. It feels like I'm letting them win.
I completely understand that reaction.
Yeah.
I do. But you have to reframe the goal. The goal isn't to be right. The goal is to stop the attack. You are trying to calm their amygdala so their brain can actually hear you. You're fighting fear with safety.
Okay, but how do I respect a bully without feeling like a doormat? Give me a script.
You don't respect the behavior. You respect the human effort. Let's say a colleague is yelling about a project failing. You don't say, I respect how you're yelling at me.
All right.
You say, I can see how frustrated you are. That's empathy. I want to hear your thoughts on this. That's attention. And here's the kicker. I respect the commitment you've brought to this project.
Even if their commitment is like totally misguided.
Yes. You aren't validating their facts. You are validating their existence. When you say, I respect your effort, it lowers the threat level in their brain. It's a biological hack, not a moral surrender.
A biological hack. Okay, so I've hacked their amygdala. They've stopped screaming. Now we move to analyze options.
Now you try to shift them to their logical brain. You give them a choice. But don't make it an open-ended question like, what do you want to do? That's too overwhelming for them in that state.
So give them a multiple choice test.
Basically, think about a difficult client. You don't ask, how can I fix this? You say, we have a dilemma. We can either file the complaint now, which takes 2 weeks, or we can issue a partial refund today. Which do you prefer?
I see. You force them to use the problem-solving part of their brain to weigh A versus B.
Exactly. It moved them out of the emotional storm.
Now, R, respond. This is specifically for written communication, right? Like texts and emails.
Yes. And for this, we use the BIFF method. Brief, informative, friendly, firm.
I think we need to role play this to really see it. Because I know how I want to respond to a nasty email.
Okay, give me your bad draft. A co-parent sends you a long ranting email accusing you of being late and neglecting the kids. What do you want to write?
I want to write. Listen here, you hypocrite. I was 5 minutes late because of traffic, which you would know if you lived in the real world. And by the way, you forgot to pick them up twice last month, so don't you dare talk to me about neglect. Check your facts.
Satisfying to write
I've been.
and totally disastrous to send. It defends, I was late because. Counterattacks. You forgot twice, and it's hostile. It just invites a 10-page reply.
Okay, so fix it. Give me the BIFF version.
Brief,
Yeah.
informative, friendly, firm. It would look like this. Thanks for the email regarding pickup. I was 5 minutes late due to traffic. I will ensure I am on time next week. Have a good weekend.
That's it.
That's it.
It feels incomplete. I didn't defend myself against the neglect accusation.
You don't need to. If you defend, you are validating that the accusation is worthy of a defense. By ignoring the insults and just stating the facts, I was 5 minutes late, you starve the fire of oxygen.
I see.
Friendly is just, thanks for the email. And firm means you didn't ask a question. The conversation is over.
It's so boring. And I guess that's the point. You want to be a gray rock.
Boring is safe.
Finally, set limits.
This is where you have to stop the behavior. But the trick is, don't make it personal. Don't say, I won't do this. Say, the policy doesn't allow this.
Make the bad guy an external authority. I'd love to help, but the legal department says no.
Exactly. It turns it from me versus you into us versus the rule.
I want to zoom out for the last segment here. We've talked about spotting these people and managing them, but one thing that always baffles me is how they get away with it. Why do other people, smart people, often defend them?
This is the concept of negative advocates, or what the internet likes to call flying monkeys.
Like in The Wizard of Oz.
Right. HCPs are very, very good at recruiting helpers. Because they portray themselves as victims, they manipulate the empathy of others. They'll go to a coworker and say, you won't believe how mean the host was to me today.
And they believe it.
And because they believe their own lies so intensely, they're very convincing.
So good people get tricked into fighting the HCP's battles.
All the time. Eddy notes that emotional persuasion is much stronger than factual persuasion. If an HCP is crying and shaking and you are sitting there calmly with a spreadsheet, the observers will instinctively side with the crying person.
Wow.
They mistake emotion for truth.
That is terrifying. It means if you keep your cool, you might actually look like the cold-hearted villain.
It's a risk. That's why you need to document everything and just stay consistent. Eventually, the flying monkeys usually figure it out, but it takes time.
It feels like we see this on a macro scale, too. Politics, social media, it's all very HCP coded.
It is. We live in a high-conflict culture. Media encourages us versus them thinking. It encourages blaming. It encourages all-or-nothing emotional reactions.
Right.
If you consume that all day, you are essentially training your brain to mimic an HCP.
That kind of brings us to our final thought. We've spent this whole time analyzing them, the crazy people out there, but Bill Eddy has a warning for us, too.
He does. We all have an amygdala. We all have the capacity for fear and blame. The most radical thing you can do in a high-conflict world is to manage your own reactivity.
Stop trying to be right and start trying to be effective.
Yes. You have to ask yourself, am I reacting or am I responding? If you can control your own amygdala, you remove the HCP's power over you. You break the cycle.
It's not easy, but it sounds like the necessary survival skill for the 2020s.
I really think it is.
Well, I'm going to go practice my boring BIFF emails. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Stay effective.